Okay, so my name's Al Milledge, and I'm a coach and a facilitator. And I I've done that job for quite a long time, but I haven't done it in the way that I do it now. Um, so when I first came across the three principles, was listening to a book by Michael Neal, which was the Inside Out Revolution, and I listened to it on Audible. And I used to live near a park, so I walked around this park kind of three or four, five times, listening to this book, and then listened to the book again. And I knew there was something there, but I didn't quite know what it was at the time. Um, and then I realized one of the stories that really popped out for me was that Michael talked about suicidal ideation, and he described the experience of when he was in, I think, a dorm room at college, and this feeling came over him of just wanting to kind of draw him out the window. And there was this, I don't remember the whole story now, so I'm not gonna try and recreate it. But the feeling that I got from him not only talking honestly about that sensation, but talking about it without the heavy feeling of suicide, which is the way that I'd always talked about suicide before if I'd ever discussed it with anybody. And there was something about the way that Michael portrayed that time in his life that really spoke to me. It spoke to something inside me that hadn't quite woken up before. I'd always seen myself as a victim of that kind of thinking. I tried to commit suicide when I was 18, and from then on, it was always that kind of that dark thing in the background, that door that was ajar that I could go through if things ever got too bad. And I didn't realize that's what it was at the time. I can talk about it like that in retrospect. But it's funny, it was just, I always had this kind of get out clause for life. So inevitably, of course, I wasn't actually in life. I was always in this place of just being able to leave. And I didn't see that. And I kind of got a real feeling of that. I don't know how much of that I saw at that time, but I got a real feeling of that and the um, innocence of the way that I was looking at it and the way that I'd created it. I saw all of that in that listening to Michael's book and then listening again, listening again. So that was the kind of the first main insight I had, and that's what kind of had me come back and then find Sid Banks stuff on YouTube and start to speak to people and start to get involved in organisations and then I went for some training at One Thought with Aaron and Leela Turner, and that was where I met Susan Marmot, and she said, "Oh, you should come along because we're doing this work in prisons, and I think you'd be great for it." And and so I joined up with Beyond Recovery, did lots of volunteer work until eventually I kind of did some work for them properly. Um, and it was the best training ground because before that I'd been a coach and I'd sat down and I'd talk to people and I'd give them tools and tricks and all of the things that I felt like they needed when they were talking to me about what they didn't have in their lives and how they could kind of insert something else. But I started to see, particularly working in prison, that everybody is absolutely whole and perfect. Underneath all that noisy thinking, everybody is just that. And I kept on seeing it again and again and again in, arguably sometimes a difficult environment. And I think it was a great way of me really seeing it for myself and seeing the um, equitable nature of of me and other people. There's me going in to facilitate groups with these guys who, for one reason or another, have found themselves in prison. And then I would sit in a group with them and they would say something and it would kick off something in me, an insight. And I think, oh, yeah, I have never seen it like that before. So it's a beautiful way of kind of really understanding how, equal we all are. I did that for about 4 or 5 years. I would love to see, because of my experience and because of the way that I see the world now, my life hasn't changed particularly at all. I mean, I've got the same amount of kind of work, but I don't do it in the same place. So there are things that have changed. But my feeling of life and the way that I feel in life is just absolutely 180. I see life completely differently now, completely feel connected to myself all of the time. I don't, I sometimes feel lonely, but I don't feel kind of isolated anymore. There's just a different way, and because nothing much has changed, you can see the the enormity of the change because there's nothing on the outside that you can kind of point to. I've seen absolutely that I create my life moment to moment with my thoughts. I see absolutely time and time and time again that I get caught up in a thought and it creates this feeling inside me. And then I go off into, some historical kind of event. And I'm not aware of any of this. I just feel bad for a bit. And I remember distinctly before trying to work out what that bad feeling was and how what I needed to do to get myself out of it. And of course, now I don't do anything. Just wait for it to pass. It will pass. Or I'll have I'll have some insight about, I don't know, going for a walk or picking up a book or doing something really simple, basic. It's really a practical understanding of people. And how I see this really creating a different world is that if every educator and every medical doctor and psychiatrist just learn to listen properly to people, just learn to hear what people are saying beyond the words, just learn to be a little bit quiet with their clients, then I don't think they need to learn anything else. I think just that learning would then take them off on a path to other things. But just that would create so much less noise in the world. And that's what we all need. Less noise in our heads.